In Islam, the ulama are the guardians, transmitters, and interpreters of religious knowledge in Islam, including Islamic doctrine and law. By long-standing tradition, ulama are educated in religious institutions. The Quran and Sunnah are the scriptural sources of traditional Islamic law. Students did not associate themselves with a specific educational institution, but rather sought to join renowned teachers. By tradition, a scholar who had completed his studies was approved by his teacher. At the teacher's individual discretion, the student was given the permission for teaching and for the issuing of legal opinions. The official approval was known as the ijazat at tadris wa, lifta. Through time, this practice established a chain of teachers and pupils who became teachers in their own time. The traditional place of higher education was the madrasa. The institution likely came up in Khorasan during the 10th century AD, and spread to other parts of the Islamic world from the late 11th century onwards. The most famous early madrasas are the Sunni Nizamiya, founded by the Seljuk vizier Nizam al-Mulk onwards. Madrasas often became part of an architectural complex which also included a mosque, a Sufi tariqa, and other buildings of socio-cultural function, like baths or a hospital. Madrasas were sacred places of learning. They provided boarding and salaries to a limited number of teachers, and boarding for a number of students out of the revenue from religious endowments for the Ottoman imperial madrasas founded by Suleiman the Magnificent, as Burki, as well as the rational sciences like philosophy, astronomy, mathematics or medicine. The inclusion of these sciences sometimes reflect the personal interests of their donors, but also indicate that scholars often studied various different sciences. Early on in Islamic history, a line of thought developed around the idea of mysticism, striving for the perfection, the sense of the distance and nearness of God. In the language of love. During the 7th century, the ritual of dhikr evolved as a way of freeing the soul from the distractions of the world. Important early scholars who further elaborated on mysticism were Harith al-Muhasibi and Junayd al-Baghdadi. The early Muslim conquests brought about Arab Muslim rule over large parts of the Hellenistic world. During the time of the Umayyad Caliphate, at latest, the scholars of the emerging Islamic society had become familiar with the classical philosophical and scientific traditions of the world they had conquered. The collection of classical works and their translation into the Arabian language initiated a period which is known today as the Islamic Golden Age. According to Harani, the works of the classical scholars of antiquity were met with considerable intellectual curiosity by Islamic scholars. Harani quotes al-Kindi, the father of Islamic philosophy, as follows: "We should not be ashamed to acknowledge truth from whatever source it comes to us, even if it is brought to us by former generations and foreign peoples. For him who seeks the truth there is nothing of higher value than truth itself." The works of Aristotle, in particular his Nicomachean Ethics, had a profound influence on the Islamic scholars of the Golden Age like al-Farabi. In general, the Islamic philosophers saw no contradiction between philosophy and the religion of Islam. However, according to Harani, al-Farabi also wrote that philosophy in its pure form was reserved for an intellectual elite, and that ordinary people should rely for guidance on the Sharia. The distinction between a scholarly elite and the less educated masses was to become a commonplace of Islamic thought, as exemplified by the works of al-Razi. During later times, philosophy was carried on as a private activity, largely by medical men, pursued with discretion, and often met with suspicion. The founder of Islamic philosophical ethics is Ibn Miskawayh. He combined Aristotelian and Islamic ethics, explicitly mentioning the Nicomachean Ethics and its interpretation by Porphyry of Gaza as the foundation of his philosophical thoughts. In the 12th century, the early Islamic Neoplatonism, which had developed out of Hellenistic philosophy, was effectively criticized by al-Ghazali, one of the most influential scholars of Islam. In his works Ahafat al-Falasifa, he refuted the philosophy of Ibn Sina, and demonstrated that the Aristotelian ethics is incompatible with Islamic ethics. The latter is based on the belief in God and in life after death, which together provide the foundation of action in the pursuit of Sa'ada. According to Shia Islam, the authority to interpret the messages of the Quran and the Hadith lies with the Imama, a line of infallible interpreters of the truth. The Sunni majority, however, reject this concept and maintain that God's will has been completely revealed in the Quran and Sunnah of the Prophet. The capacity of its interpretation lies with the